Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel, this is Jason. We are the Weatherfords. Welcome to our days. We are on the last episode of our month of studying Andrew Lloyd Webber and some of his most famous plays.
Famous and enduring works, yes.
So this one I am really excited for. Mm-hmm. And I didn't start out really excited for it, but I think that as I reviewed Cats and got back into it, I got more and more excited about it. So
we're talking about Cats.
Cats, yes. So we've already covered Phantom, we've covered Joseph, we've covered Jesus Christ Superstar, and this is the last one. So if you haven't seen any of those and you are interested after watching this one, please go check those out. Give a little plug. But yeah, so Cats. I think that this is one of those that just people mostly like to say they hate it. Very few people actually embrace loving it.
Do they begrudgingly love it?
I think that most people that love it begrudgingly love it.
I don't know. I've met some early on in my life. I met some
I love Cats.
Yeah, Cat super. I've met some Cat super fans, and I've met some that like, what is there?
A lot of people like to really hate on this one.
Confused by it, and kind of they don't know what to think. They're just kind of like, I even made a joke that I think that I had a fever one time, and maybe while I was on the couch watching PBS, something came up about it, and I thought, was that just part of the fever dream? And it is very dreamlike, so it does lend itself to that, and it's very different, so it does lend itself to that kind of feeling. But I don't think that's enough for somebody just to chuck it out as not being important.
Yeah, I think that Andrew Lloyd Webber liked to experiment. I think that that's one of the things that you can see in all the different plays that he's done. Like, Phantom of the Opera is probably the one that's the most seemingly normal, and yet I don't think at the time that it was normal. He kind of took opera and he pushed it. With Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, he took a Bible story and he pushed it. Jesus Christ Superstar, he's taking that story of Jesus and he's just twisting it. Yeah. And then with this one, again, he's taking a ballet and a musical and just pushing, it's like just pushing the boundaries of what can I do? What can I get away with?
Elements of pantomime, I think, as well, too, because there's lots of, we're telling stories with our hands and our faces and our bodies. And I don't know if this came out in the early 80s, very early 80s. I don't think anybody had seen anything like it before. And it came out, I think, at the perfect time to do this. Any other time,
I don't know
would it
that
have
we've
worked?
Necessarily seen anything like it since. Have we? I
think people would be like, oh, you're just doing Cats. Like they would do something else and they would be like, oh, you're just doing Cats. They would think that because that's how influential it is they would be like, It
really is. I mean, it was just unique. It still is really unique. And it's, I think, unique in a way that shouldn't have worked, and yet it does. So that's
the closest thing is something Andrew Lloyd Webber did, which is Starlight Express, where it's the life of trains, and they're all skating on roller skates. That's pushing it.
But
because I don't know any. Yeah.
Most people don't even know about that one. Everybody knows about Cats. Not everybody knows about that.
I only know about that one because someone said it exists, and I was like, what? And then I looked it up, and it exists. I thought it was a joke, but it really. I don't mean to. People, when they really like those musicals, they really like them, and then you may, just like Cats, you may kind of go, oh no, and then like I did, sorry, and then you kind of let yourself kind of go with it and be interested. Yeah.
I think that it's kind of like there's a stepping that happens. Like, you have to first like musicals, And once you like musicals, then it's like, okay, now I'm willing to actually try and see what is Cats about. And most people, when they actually have gone, oh, I actually like musicals, are willing and give Cats a chance. Most of them are like, oh, wow, I actually really like it. And they end up surprised at the fact that they like it. But
I'm not a musical super fan, but there are musicals that I liked. And then I have to admit, I had some judgment against musicals because I had an early relationship that was somebody was just way too into it, and I was kind of like, okay, that's your thing. But I think that it all depends on the person that you're with, and you kind of led me into some of those classic musicals that I remember from a long time ago, and I got a new appreciation for them. So I think you have something to do with it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think too, what I have seen from most people who do actually look at musicals and examine them, they don't, it tends to be more of a surface level. Most people don't kind of dig into the depths the way that I tend to want to do. And a lot of people that do dig into the depths are like, there's nothing there, and just dismiss it. However, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to dig into the depths and say, there is something here. And yet, it's not as deep as a lot of people want it to be. It's actually very simple. I think that the plot to Cats is very simple, and yet there is surprisingly depth to it. So that's where I want to go tonight. So
that's a good thesis statement for this, yeah.
Yeah. So the story of Cats. This should be brief.
Because some people say that the story is very, very thin and can be summed up very quickly, but that oversimplifies it too much.
I think that that's actually the genius of this, is that it's very simplistic, and that's okay. It makes it very enjoyable, and yet it kind of just gets you at the end. Like, it hooks you in, you're thinking, oh, this is light and fluffy and just happy, and then you're like, whoa, actually, wow, I didn't expect to be emotionally, touched by this. And that's what Cats will do to you. So the story, again, let's actually state it.
Mm-hmm.
We are introduced to the Jellicle cats, which is generally just a made-up term for cats. I've heard some people say that it's like this specific clan. I don't know that it necessarily is. I think it's just cats.
It's based off a poem by T.S. Eliot, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, and Jellicle came from
multiple poems.
Yes,
not just a poem.
Thank you. It came from a little child saying "Dear little cats," and you could almost hear it if you think about it some more.
Okay.
So that's Jellicle cats, but it's deeper. It's deeper than that, I'm sure.
So they are meeting at this specific night. They're going to have a ball, and at this ball, they're going to choose who is going to get to ascend to the Heaviside layer to be reborn. And I know a lot of people have said basically they're competing to see who gets to die. I think that's wrong. I don't think they're competing to die. I think they're excited to see who is going to be chosen to be reborn. I don't see this as a competition, because it's very much they're introducing. And I think most people see basically you're introducing a bunch of different cats and any of them could be chosen. I kind of see it a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. I feel like some of them are introduced as a story plot, the younger cats, and it's more of they're introducing themselves as they're coming in, and the ones that get introduced by someone else that are the elderly cats are the ones that are actually being considered. That makes sense in my headcanon. Either that or all of the ones who have songs should have been old and telling about their lives. So, because that's kind of, you get these very few specific, seemingly elderly cats that are introduced by other people, that you're looking at what their lives are and what their character is, and that's a major part of the plot, is like looking at all of these different cats and who they are. And as Andrew Lloyd Webber does so very well, you get each one of the cats kind of in a different style of music. And yeah, that's kind of where you go. You have, and a lot of the fun of it is just seeing these little, cat characters introduced, because they're very, and these are what the poems are based off,
yep.
Right? Is, these different personalities of cats.
The lyrics to the songs as well are just straight out of the poetry.
Yeah. And then you've got, the Jellicle Cats bit that's more of the dancing and the overall the
ball
thing that comes back,
kind of
that brings in the ball and everything. That's, everybody's on the stage and you get to see the athleticism, and that's, this plot line that's just kind of going through. So, and it's sung completely through. There's no speaking.
There's a chanting kind of thing where they go.
But it's a song.
Yes, it feels like they are chanting in the thing, and it's kind of spoken. Almost feels like spoken word poetry in some ways to me. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, but it's considered a sung through musical.
It is, yes.
Rather than a musical that has like dialogue in between the songs.
Right. It's done with a rhythmic. Yeah.
So the story ends with this one old, tattered, worn out cat. Out of all of the cats that are kind of a part of the tribe and they're accepted, and then you've got this one that's kind of been rejected and left out in the cold. And she is the one that is chosen. Well, oh wait, no, are we going to talk about Deuteronomy getting kidnapped? Because that's the only other really big thing that happens, is you've got the introduction of all the cats, you've got old Deuteronomy, who's the leader of their tribe, and he gets kidnapped by the big bad guy, which you see, a couple of times you see everybody, there's like a clattering and a noise and everybody's like scared and they're like, it's McCavity. And then it doesn't end up being him, like the first couple of times that everybody's scared that it is him. And then all of a sudden he comes out of nowhere and his henchmen like kidnap the leader in the middle of this Jellicle Ball and take him away. And it's just like, oh no, what's going to happen now? We don't have old Deuteronomy. He can't choose anybody anymore.
Right.
And then we have one of my favorite characters comes and saves the day, because he's just such a odd choice for being the savior, right? He's not the charismatic one. He's not the one with the brains. It seems like, it should be. No, the one who saves the day is a magician. And he's just this little small black and white cat who is flashy, and he is able to perform magic tricks. And he brings back, through a magic trick, old Deuteronomy, which is incredible. And yes, even before I actually knew, because this was another one, just like the other plays of his, that I first fell in love with this through just listening to the CDs that I got from the library. So right. I just was listening through it. And I didn't actually watch the play until much later. So I knew all the music and I knew the story just from listening to the music. And this was my favorite song of the album there too, was the Mr. Mistopheles. And yeah, it's still just as good when you watch it, I think anyway. But yeah, so he gets brought back in, and then they're able to actually, now old Deuteronomy's back and they can choose who the cat is going to be.
Right.
And so they choose the old worn out one. Griselda? I always want to say her name wrong.
The glamour cat. Yeah.
Griselda the glamour cat. And she's the one chosen. They take her and she ascends up to the Heaviside layer. And then you have an ending song that for some reason they decide they want to tell you after all of that, and it's very emotional and very beautiful, and you have this, grand triumphant thing. They go, a cat is not a dog.
That's one part of it. I listened to that song and they were like, I don't know. I think they were trying to say something else there that they're cats, but they're also us in some ways. I don't know. That's kind of what I got from it. That it's kind of like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
You kind of do see in all of the snapshots, like, as much as, yes, they're quirky and they're different and they're giving off very cat vibes, there's still a relatability. Like, you can see people that you know in these little caricatures of the cats.
Troublemakers or aristocrats or rebels or, hard workers or people that used to have a career that they don't anymore. They miss those olden days, those olden golden days,
Yeah. So, yeah, that's in brief the plot. If you haven't seen it, I do highly encourage. This is one just to listen to watch, have fun with. There's tons of different versions. Again, like most all of these Andrew Lloyd Webber, you're going to have some of them that for some reason, even though this is supposed to be family friendly and tons of people take their children to watch it, some of these just are oddly sexualized. The way that, that some of them choose to do it. And it's like, why? Why? And it's just a few of the songs that have that kind of stuff in it, and you're just like, that was totally unnecessary, didn't add to it, and like, it didn't need to be there.
A lot of them are in skin tight lycra costumes, but the newer, or what do we call that? There was a newer one that I saw a clip of, and they were wearing more modern clothes, and those didn't tend to be as form-fitting as you might think. And it's a creative way to go because they didn't look as cat-like, but they gave the feeling of cat-likeness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Even though they had modern clothes.
The one that was actually filmed, I felt like even though you got like the angles and the close-ups on their faces, so you got a lot of the emotion and stuff through that. That was where it's like, oh, we're like focusing on like, okay, they're like shaking their booties right now. We're gonna just like zoom in on it.
Yeah.
And then, but I watched a run through of it that was actually like a stage performance, and it was zoomed back because it was just somebody in the audience that was recording, and like it was, to me, that was so much easier to watch, and you could see everything. And I'm going, the costumes, even because you're not so close up on them, it looks more realistic, and you're getting the overall picture. And I wish that they had actually done the movie recording, which is not the movie.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different thing.
From 98. This one's from 2012. This is the normal off-Broadway.
Was it 2012? I thought that was Jesus Christ Superstar.
This one, recording. The one you saw was from the 2000s.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't think the movie recording was.
Well, see, that's the thing about movies is the camera is the eyeball, and so when you have a film, when you have something that somebody is legally or illegally filming it from the audience, your eye can look at different things. That's what theater is your eye can follow this character and look at this character. Oh, I like that one.
This does so much better as an actual stage production than as a movie. And I think that anytime that you take something that is supposed to be produced on stage, that has the lighting and the costuming and the makeup and, just this it's made to be watched from a certain perspective, and you try to record that professionally.
Yeah.
I think that it actually a lot of times ends up detracting from the experience rather than adding to it.
You're telling them what to focus on. It's almost like they're leading the audience to, hey, look at this.
I would rather somebody just, it's like,
Let you have
okay,
the freedom
professionally record it, sure, but record it like we're in the audience watching it like it's meant to be watched. That, I would so much rather have that than have somebody that's actually choosing what I need to focus on. Because the experience is from back. You get so much more when you see it that way. But anyway, so with all that kind of briefly glossing over the plot, which, again, there's so many cute and just interesting pictures of these different cats that, I don't think we can do justice to them. You just have to go and watch. But the thing that fascinated me the most, and was something that I don't think that I really caught when I first started watching it. I think that it took kind of growing up, maturing, and, having a different perspective on this. And it's something that I don't think that, because, I scoured YouTube kind of trying to see what other people were talking about when it came to cats and, what the different opinions and stuff are, which is very interesting. But, I don't think that anybody is really talking about this from a Christian perspective. Can you bring a Christian perspective into Andrew Lloyd Webber? Well, yeah, because you can bring a Christian perspective into anything, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where I went, let's have some fun with this and look at what Andrew Lloyd Webber is trying to say. The biggest theme that jumps out from that perspective is this is, at its heart, a story of redemption, right? You've got this idea of, Griselda the glamour cat. She's old and she's tattered, and when she first comes out on stage, you can see that everybody is just kind of, they don't even want to look at her. They won't let, the young kittens are kind of curious about her, and they don't want, the older cats are like pulling back the younger kittens and saying, don't touch her. And then you've got some of the male cats are like kind of playing with her and toying with her and taunting. And, you never really see why. They never explain what it is that she did, why she's rejected by the clan. And yet, she's the one that is chosen. Out of all of these other elderly cats that love their lives, she's the one that doesn't. She's the one that kind of needs a do-over, right?
No, and also, she gets introduced, but no one really touches her, brings her out. Gus, the theater cat, is guided on. I know it's because it's played by an older actor generally, but it's almost like they bring him out like okay, they're their grandfather. But Griselda, they don't touch her, they don't guide her, they let her just.
She doesn't have anybody that loves her and cares for her. Everyone else of the cats that gets introduced is very lovingly portrayed. They're a part of the family, and she's been rejected. She's being shunned. And, that's kind of the thing of she's going, touch me. It's so easy to leave me. And you see again and again, like somebody will start to reach out or she reaches out. Even you see old Deuteronomy when she's singing her song. Because you've got kind of 3 different points at which she comes out. The first time she comes out and she is like saying, I'm tattered and torn, look at me, but there's kind of a pride to her attitude. she's going, yeah, I'm tattered and I'm rejected, and you can look at me and make fun of me, but why does nobody want to, why does nobody accept me? But there's kind of this acceptance in her, and she still has a pride where she's going, fine, and she kind of, just chin up and continues on, but you can see she's broken.
It's almost faking it till you make it,
right?
In some ways.
But she's hanging on to her pride because that's the only thing she has left. And you see the next time she comes in, there's just kind of this wearing down, because she comes in and again, she's trying to, and I think that there's a part of her that wants to be there because she knows somebody's going to be chosen. She wants to be the one that's chosen, and yet she's too proud to ask for it. But she keeps coming back. And so she comes back, and it's, again, everybody's turning from her, everybody's rejecting her, everybody's shunning her. And after they all kind of leave, you see her, she's the only one there, but Deuteronomy's there. And she's singing, that's when she sings the first iteration of the memory song, which is the most famous song, I think, in this play. Everybody knows memory. Not everybody knows how it fits into the play. So this is where it's coming. She's going, all alone in the moonlight, and she's reflecting on her life and how she used to be beautiful, and she wants a new day to come again. So there's this idea of this longing for what she used to have, and yet it's very sad, and she feels all alone. And
there's one thing. There's a night theme,
mm-hmm.
and she talks about a morning is coming, or dawn, a new day, and it's interesting that
I kind of thought represented the
that's also
life.
That's also yes,
mm-hmm.
cyclic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, that's when Deuteronomy makes his choice, is the first dawn, the dawn of the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it's like that's the chance for renewal, for rebirth in anybody's life, is that there's darkness and there's the night, but the new day can dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you see old Deuteronomy is kind of reaching out to her. So you can see he's being swayed. He's seeing her, and he's realizing that there's something there of worth.
Yeah.
And I think that it took her kind of breaking down, even when she didn't think that anybody was there and looking. I think in that moment of vulnerability, that's when you see the truth of the hurt and the loneliness and the longing coming out. And I think that was important to see for Deuteronomy. That was,
right.
I don't think that she would have been chosen if she hadn't had that moment. And so then after that is when you get a couple more introductions to characters. You get more amazing dance choreographed numbers. You get the kidnapping scene, and then magical Mephistopheles bringing Deuteronomy back. And you also get the bad guy scene, which is pretty trippy. This, it's McCavity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know why I always think that, like, my cavity, that this is like somebody that really, really hated dentists. Sorry to my brother.
No, I don't. Yeah. It sounds like a Sherlock Holmes villain, like a Moriarty, or that kind of that.
Cavity, my cavity. It's a great song that does not fit with how horrible he ends up being. Like, and the fight scene that happens right after. You've got this really kind of jazzy introduction to McCavity, and then, like, he tries to come in disguise, like disguised as old Deuteronomy. Like, oh, he's back, which, there are theories around why he was there. Like, was he trying to be the one that was, to choose himself to be reborn? Coming in, he knew that he would never get chosen, so he's trying to replace old Deuteronomy to do that.
Right.
I don't know, or was he just causing mischief because that's what he is? He's the one that, is able to, just out of malice.
Yep.
Who knows what his end game was, but he was thwarted through magical means. Fabulous. And you have kind of a replacement person too. There was a cat that actually Mephistopheles takes, and he asks for a volunteer, and she volunteers to be a part of this act. And so he covers her up and switches her with old Deuteronomy. And then, she comes back in at the end. So it's okay, she's okay. But you kind of go, okay, is she all right? She just took his place, but he was he was kidnapped. Is she, is she okay? But anyway, like I said, there's a lot more to this. There's questions that you're going, there's this whole story, and
I just
what all is happening.
I let it unfold. I didn't ask any questions. I just went, okay. That was my response.
Yeah, the first time that you watch it, sure, but as you continue watching it, you realize there's all of this, stuff where people that are like, oh, there's no plot, you're like, are we watching the same thing? There's a plot. Yes, it's a simple plot, but it's a plot.
There's one thing that I kind of caught on to was there's a moment when there's a shift, and this song about what is true happiness, and it's coming from Griselda's point of view, you start seeing it echoed in a couple different cats, younger cats. Mm-hmm. Specifically, there's a female cat that starts singing a similar song to that. Similar, and I'm like, okay, they're seeing her, they're kind of seeing through her eyes, and they're kind of going, mm-hmm. I can see what, and that kind of sways it, I think, towards her being, everybody being okay with her being the chosen one.
They start seeing her and start having compassion on her. And then when she comes back again, it's that's when Deuteronomy announces that it's going to be her. And you get this song where she really is, because she and that young cat, the kitten, are singing a duet together at that point. And it's so beautiful. That's the point that I'm going, I'm just bawling, and I'm going, why am I crying over cats? I'm not even a cat person, but
I'm allergic to cats, and my eyes water with cats, but not,
Yeah, but
it's a different
this is
emotion
the
altogether.
one where it's okay, we've got this story where they're rejecting her, and she's proud, and she's trying to continue through, but because she opens up and is vulnerable, even when she doesn't realize that anyone is watching, then they're able to see her. And then, it is the whole thing where she's like, touch me. They touch her at that point, and it's she is the one that needed the most to actually have the second chance at living, and they give it to her. And it really is, you see all these other candidates that, potentially could have been chosen, but they lived good lives. They were happy with their lives. Or even if they didn't live good lives, they still lived their lives the way that they wanted to, and they were content.
Right.
And they didn't need that second chance. Whereas Griselda did, and she's the one that gets it. And that's just, there's such a beauty in that. But at the same time, okay, so that's Cats, right? And you get this beautiful redemption story, which really, it's touching, it's heartwarming, it's simple enough that yes, a child can understand what's happening and appreciate it. And I love that. Worth seeing. Beautiful story, even in the middle of, some very cat-like, unusual behavior and, quirkiness. But let's look then, because you have this idea of redemption. And it struck me as I'm watching this. The idea of redemption is not something new. This is the fourth week we've gone over an Andrew Lloyd Webber play. We've seen this idea before. In the Phantom of the Opera, you had the phantom who desperately wanted redemption.
Right.
Right? He's looking for somebody to see him and tell him that he is worth something and that he can start fresh. He's looking for this new start with Christine. He doesn't get it, right? You see in Joseph this idea of redemption. You have Joseph, who was rejected by his brothers, cast out, who then has the opportunity to in turn reject his brothers and chooses not to, and there's a restoration that happens, right?
Right.
You see in Jesus Christ Superstar, in this case, we have Judas, who is coming back at the end going, there's actually a couple of different things. You've got all the apostles, or the disciples. I keep trying to call them apostles. All the disciples who are like, can we start again?
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got Judas, who is like, was this actually what was supposed to happen? Don't get me wrong, I just want to know. And oddly enough, in that one, the actual redemption part of the story, which is Jesus being resurrected, and the fact that we didn't need a redemption for the disciples because their story wasn't over yet. And Jesus, for sure, he brought the redemption. But Judas was just wrong. But for some reason, we were trying to get a redemption for Judas. Am I painting that fairly?
Jesus doesn't get, you mentioned this earlier, you said Jesus doesn't get a redemption. He gets a failed redemption, basically.
Yeah. But again, we
it's
twisted
a tragedy
that story
rather
so
than
much
that.
Yeah. But again, I feel like from Andrew Lloyd Webber's perspective, he was trying to get a redemption for Judas. He wanted this character who to him had been very misunderstood and abused somewhat, through history, to be understood. And through that, it's a redemption after the fact, right? Of people actually understanding his perspective and why he did what he did. And in that case, I think that, in some way, or in some people's minds, he gave Judas a redemption. Again, you can go back and watch our thoughts on Jesus Christ Superstar, because that's an entirely different one. But in this one, again, you have this idea of redemption for someone who is old and tattered and has been rejected and is sad, who then gets a redemption. And I feel like it's interesting because the ones that he gets right, I feel like weren't because of him. And even then, it's kind of like, well, did we do it completely right anyway? Because to a Christian, redemption is not getting a chance at a new life. And redemption even would not be like the Phantom was wanting with Christine, which is for her to be willing to marry him and kind of try and start again. That would not have been a true redemption for what he had lived. When we look as Christians at the concept of redemption, we're looking not at a start to a brand new life and a chance at a new life, which a lot of religions teach, right?
Right.
Is that, you can come back and have another chance at life. That's not a Christian belief. For Christians, we go, you know what? Your redemption is that Jesus forgives you of your sins and you're cleansed, like the slate is wiped clean, and you have a new life now. At whatever point in your life you need, it's a new start.
Yeah.
And then you have eternity in heaven. It's not a new life here on earth in which you can make more mistakes and, mess up your life all over again.
Right.
Because, oh my goodness, how sad would it be in the story of Cats if Griselda had this brand new life and it ended up being another tragedy? She's the same person.
That's a downside of the traditional thoughts on that kind of reincarnation. And the problem, one main problem with that is, in your next life, are you going to remember the mistakes that you made in the previous life and not make those? And there's no guarantee of that. There's not any guarantee that you're going to practice the same mindfulness that you had in this current life that somehow did you well. You may end up in completely different circumstances and not become what you were before to learn.
It's not a Groundhog Day.
No, but the thing is, at least with Groundhog Day, his memory stayed through.
But even that's the same thing. Like, he ended up changing over a long period of time, right? And multiple mistakes.
Yeah.
And he had enough chances to actually reach the end of all of his thoughts of what it was that he needed to do and how to live his life. That's not realistic for most people's thoughts of getting another life. It's like, most likely, since you are the same person, you're going to end up screwing up again. For a Christian, it's like, that's not the case. Your slate is wiped clean, but you are reborn, and the Holy Spirit is there to lead and guide. Yes, you still may make mistakes, but there's this constant new day. Every day that you wake up and you have Jesus in your life, and there's this living and this growing and this Spirit that's there with you, teaching you and guiding you and leading you. And it's like, how much better is that to have than to just be sent into a new life completely on your own?
But you're still living it. You're living your best life, living your new life. But the problem is, it says, he who seeks to save his life will lose it, but he who gives up his life for my sake will take it up again. And so that ultimately shows that you're taking up a new life, but it's his life. And so you're not doing something that's self-focused. You're doing something that is going to be him focused and his people. And ultimately it's going to be more rewarding than if you were to, I'm going to have a life where, I make all new mistakes.
Yeah. So.
No thanks.
But again, with all of these, like, the connection is Andrew Lloyd Webber, who's a composer. He's writing the music, but he's getting these stories from other places. And while I think that he seemed to actually have this desire for a redemption story because of the things that he chose.
Right.
He didn't write Phantom of the Opera. He took a book that had been written and he adapted it. Obviously, it was one that resonated with him.
Right.
But I think that, this common theme was there in the things that he chose to adapt. And I think that that's very deeply telling about what he was seeking as a person. And then, he chose to do Joseph. And again, the focus of what he chose, obviously he didn't write this story, but what the points that he's drawing out, and the focus and what he felt like was the pivotal moving, why of this story. Like, I feel like that was there. He's got different writers. He's got different, lyricists. He's got, and the interesting thing about Cats is, he took, and he started out just kind of, an experiment. This wasn't supposed to be a full-scale musical at first, until he heard the poem about Griselda, the glamour cat. And because that one wasn't published, that one was one that I believe his wife, which he, had passed at that point, or some caretaker of his estate or something at that point.
T.S. Eliot's wife?
Right, T.S. Eliot's. Had released it posthumously as like a, and it hadn't been published with the original book because they felt like it was too depressing for children. Because
Right.
this was, a book of children's poetry. It's about cats, and they were all happy. And then you had this one that he had written but not released with that. But when Andrew Lloyd Webber saw this one, that was kind of the thing that made him want to actually do a full musical, because he went, this has a depth and there's a story here.
Right.
But the thing is even then, he isn't the one that actually came up with the story. Yeah, that was in them finding this producer, last name Nunn, and they pulled him in. He was kind of more of he did a little bit more posh type stuff, and they wanted him to be a part of the project so that they could actually get the rights to do this. So they wanted to like impress with this guy.
Right.
So, they're looking for a name to attach. And he was the one that actually kind of came up with the idea of having this ball and having them choose someone to go to the Heaviside Layer. And it was also him that wrote the song Memory. And apparently this didn't come together until after they had started recording all of the songs. So it was like a last minute, addition to this whole work, and yet it was the thing that kind of pulled it together and has made this really timeless.
It was the crystallization of it.
Right. But I think that was something that Andrew Lloyd Webber had, this idea of this cat being what he needed to actually make this into a full-scale musical, but he wasn't the one that even necessarily connected all the dots.
Right.
And so I kind of, like some of the, like you see him being drawn to this type of story and yet not really having a full grasp, maybe, of what it was that he was looking for or trying to tell. And that's both interesting and sad to me to just contemplate, of like, I really wonder, whether he found the answer in the end. I know that, he was religious in some ways. He'd been raised religious. And yet I feel like there was something that he was kind of looking for.
A lot of agnostics have a seeker soul, and they may not come up with an answer, but they're seeking answers, and they at least are looking in different avenues, I think, than the atheist who just kind of closes themselves off to those non-materialistic answers. The agnostic at least gives that possibility. So it's something I think there's something you can work with that, and there's a poetic soul there that can't quite fully go into atheism and goes, I don't know if we can know, but I'm sure going to be interested in the questions.
It's funny because I feel like that very characteristic of seeking and wondering and looking for redemption and looking at all of these different people that are broken and hurting and, looking for answers.
Right.
I feel like the heart of these different stories is what resonates with people the most. It's what leaves people going, that was fun, and there was so much that was just, fluffy and light, and, all of the skill and the music and the costuming and the dancing and, choreography and all of this that just makes these so visually entertaining, and yet the heart that makes people keep coming back and makes people really, latch on to these is that question and that desire for, what is it, we can see ourselves, I guess, in that desire.
And maybe it's easier to do through that dream fantasy lens. Mm-hmm. It's easier to kind of sink into it. And if it were just we're going to have regular old people here talking about what it means to be wanted and regrets about life and things like that. But if you put that in the world of these cats, somehow it kind of takes you along with it, and if you kind of go with it, it kind of goes and that's the appeal of it for some people, I think.
And it may have completely been unintentional, but I think that it was the genius that makes Andrew Lloyd Webber memorable, and what made all of his things work. It's the heartbeat of the stories that he chose to tell, was these broken, hurting people looking for redemption and the different ways that they found peace.
Or didn't. Yeah.
And that wondering. All of them kind of leave you questioning and leave you wondering. And I think that that's, the heart of most people. When you get to the heart of us, we all want to know, we recognize that we're messed up and that we're broken and we want redemption. But I don't know, anything to do other than go, I feel like Andrew Lloyd Webber could have pointed people to Jesus, but I don't think he knew the way.
Or he knew who Jesus was. I mean, because even through Jesus Christ Superstar, he questions, who was this person really?
The answer's not there. In Cats, the answer's not there. Yeah.
But if Jesus is just a man, he can't redeem you, because it has to be something beyond. It has to be something that takes you through a heaviside layer. It can't just be somebody who just had some good ideas but got confused and died. It has to be something fantastical. It has to be something that borders on that celestial, that borders on that fantastical, for it to work. And when you get those elements of redemption that work, it's got to be through a Deuteronomy. It's got to be through something that's bigger, than just mortality.
But I love the fact that there's something out there that is raising the question of the ages through music in a way that makes people keep coming back and keep questioning and keep looking. Anything that shakes us out of our complacency is good. And I think that Andrew Lloyd Webber managed to do that. He didn't give the answers, but the answers are out there. So,
Yeah.
I love it. And I think that kind of sums up all my thoughts. The man, the music.
I would say one thing. If you were to tell me that I would enjoy tell my younger self that I would enjoy a musical about cats, you would be confused. But again, this is a young me grew up watching the TV series Thundercats, which was full of anthropomorphic cats, and I had no problem with it. So that, of course, would lead that it would lead me here. Who know? I could never have told you that. But when you do, I think, get older, and you do look back on your life, and you look at regrets and think ways in which you wish it had gone differently. That sometimes you can relate more to those elements, specifically of Griselda, and maybe it means something more to you now than if you were to see it when you're a younger person, and it's just this fantastical thing about cats. That there's a deeper heart to this, that maybe having a little bit of perspective and maybe being a little bit older the way I am, it causes me to look at it a little bit in a different way. Maybe. Yeah.
If anything, hopefully our musing has added to the discussion, because it's not something I've heard anybody else say before or comment on. So, I don't know, maybe it is. Internet's a big place. But we're going to wrap that up there. Hope that you've made it this far, number one. If you're listening to this, you have. Congratulations. Go you. And thank you. And I hope that you will join us next week. We're going to start a new month of discussions. We're going to be discussing Terry Pratchett and his Discworld.
I've already started on it, and I'm down.
That should be fun.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for sticking with us.